Deleted Session, September 6, 1978. Good evening. Now we have a young man who felt himself to be unimportant, lacking in stature or ability, the kind of a person who would be lost in a crowd. We now have a young man who is quite important. He is so important that others pursue him psychically. His abilities and powers are so great that others seemingly now try to rob him of them. Far from living a colorless life, he wanders through the country in the midst of an exciting psychic chase, pursued by magicians, evil powers, and the most sophisticated weaponry of joint corporations and the government. He does not have a 9-to-5 job. He is constantly in midst of drama, fleeing for his life. The system supports him, and it would not do so under other conditions. He has some financial sustenance, then some freedom as he understands it, and he is the hero, the good guy who is, however, seemingly at the mercy of his enemies. His problems are cosmic in their proportions, or so it seems to him. He has excitement again, drama, some freedom. These are his wounds. On the one hand, he knows that he is involved in a facade, playing a game, pretending to be mad. On the other hand, the game itself is becoming too real, getting out of hand, and it has prevented him from learning ordinary skills, say, which seem to be mundane and too ordinary and beneath him. I mentioned the Cinderella myth, and there everything will come out all right in the end, somehow. Its opposite is a feeling that nothing will ever come out all right because the universe itself is meaningless. Life is meaningless. Our young man believes this. Any purpose is better than none, and any intended personalized threat is better than an existence in which no life is important enough to be individually threatened. So these imagined threats serve to convince our young man that his life must have meaning or purpose. Otherwise, others would not be so intent on destroying him. He is closed and fed. He lives with adventure, threat, and must forever be on guard. He sees himself fleeing across the continent, again a hero in a vast drama, a romantic picture. He does not want Alice, for he dramatizes his isolation. Ruber is correct. He could be a hero of a short story, and so he appears to himself. It is his way of gaining stature in a world he believes is meaningless. He is afraid that he has few abilities of any kind, so he must, of course, take steps to see that they are never put to the test in the physical world. Hence, some disaster or another always prevents the great creativity that he says he has to offer. He cannot be happy, however, with the circumstances, for if he were, the entire fabric of the drama would appear false. He must take token efforts, therefore, to break away. Efforts that must be futile, because if they worked, he would be in the real world. I am doing my best to explain. I do not want you to think I am without compassion. Novelists create heroes who must overcome obstacles. Some such characters are brave and upright. Some of your heroes are scoundrels. Then they are, say, the Hunchback of Notre Dame or Frankenstein. In your living, you literally bring your ideas to life. You form the story of your life. You are involved in a study of the four dimensions of experience, in the interpretation of events themselves. You are involved in a living process, but one of such multidimensional activity that sometimes you see, of course, but one chapter in a saga whose full complexion is far different. Give me a moment. A novelist being himself or herself writing a book, will nevertheless imaginatively live the actions of all of its characters. The villain, the hero, the madman, the saint, or whatever, and a true creative gusto is involved. Then, in the author's mind, the characters will interact. The author may know the book's end, or allow the characters themselves to work out their own solutions. Here we will call the author the whole self, and the characters are real. They are themselves. They follow their own unique intents. They are not coerced, say. The plot is left open, but in the deep turns, the whole self, through its personalities, probe deeply into the meaning of life in all of its manifestations. The young man is setting himself against society, against its ideas of sanity. He is creating a reality that is in its way highly unique, a creation he feels at least is his own. It is anything but boring. Its very danger keeps him on his toes and forces him to protect his life. It is saving him from suicide. It is therefore a mental device meant to protect his life. He must protect himself from without. The phrase convinces him again that he must be important and valuable. Beneath this is the feeling that his life is of no value, that he is in fact worthless, weaker than his peers, and he detests himself enough so that he might take his own life. The phrase then convinces him of his value. To give them up would be to face his feelings of worthlessness. The situation also allows him to use his creative abilities in terms of fantasy and imagination. He has taught not to express himself, so he only uses those abilities to protect his life, which justifies them. His dilemma makes him important. He expresses in exaggerated form many quite paranoid tendencies that are considered in a milder version as quite normal. The big corporations are out to rule the world. He sees the oil company people out there with helicopters and sophisticated machinery that destroys people's vital energy. Simply a more colorful, exaggerated version of the same idea personally applied. The latest, of course, is the fear of cloning, but our young man does better than any fearmongers, for he has the personal cloning people in their eerie vans with antennae, chasing him through the streets. He becomes a sponge for numberless such attitudes. Only to him they become critically immediate. He is, however, still alive after each threat, and this convinces him that he will indeed survive. For look what he has survived so far, even though the threats grow more monstrous. When the entire affair really frightens him, he will look for another solution. And it is too bad your institutions of authority do not help. Guided imaginary could help him, for example, but he would need supervision. Robert was quite right in the method he used in speaking to him, and my presence would not have served. He would only have used it, as Robert said he would. The creative challenge is there for him, and it is one he chose himself. Take your break. You two are involved in the asking of questions and the acquisition of knowledge. You want to know about the nature of reality. You are concerned with what is wrong with the world. You want to know why it is not better than it is. You want to know how reality is created, how and why people create lives that seem to be less than desirable. Your young man gave you an excellent instance. A case that the most noteworthy psychologists or psychiatrists, if they had time, would find fascinating. You were able to gain insights that you simply would not have if you were not presented with exaggerated realities. Your young psychologist was a case in point with his quizzes. Your Andrija Puhach, your young people with their child about Christmas time. Now, these are not simply people in distress. You are presented with bigger-than-life situations, provided with raw material from life, given exaggerated versions so that from them you can draw the knowledge to help you answer your own questions, and the knowledge to help others, whose plight may be less colorful but equally vital. The people who come here are concentrated, dramatic examples of the human species at large. Their beliefs appear so drastically that you can use them as blueprints for others in whose characters the beliefs will appear more modified and perhaps nearly unnoticed. You see the beliefs, the motivations, the feelings of those whose beliefs are carried to extremes, so that you can follow them as if they were psychological clusters or cultures, isolated, so to speak. Then you can study their behavior in others. All of that is quite in keeping with your own intents and with the study of human nature with which you are involved. You are then further motivated to seek other answers than the official ones. You always help those you see, and they present themselves to you not only for themselves, but for others. You are examining the human condition, but seeking answers from the highest reaches of its capabilities. These are goals you set yourselves. If you set out to discover what was right with the world, you would be on a different path. There is much right with the world. Give us a moment. Be sure you do not close your eyes to the miracles of the world. Your point was a good one. The young man walked a good way. The energy was there to sustain him even over his delusions. Beliefs show themselves, however, far more clearly and can be examined better through the type of experience those people bring. Always remember the vitality that sustains them and that supports them. It is not withdrawal, even though the contractions they form may seem to be extremely faulty. There is much left unsaid, simply because some information available to me cannot be translated properly in ways that will make sense to you. There are explorations of emotional content, for example, very difficult to explain, in which intensities of emotion are explored for their own sake, as one might experiment with the values of red or black, not caring what the form of the painting was. You might think of a tragic opera or a musical composition, and so sometimes focus upon intensities whose form is not perceived, and which deals with a kind of power that is itself the experience. I can go no further with that verbally. Your idea of judging the quality of life or of a life is highly limited, however, for it may not lie in events as you usually think of them on many occasions. End of session, and a founded and a hearty good evening. Ross said, okay.